Discovering you, rewiring the brain, rebuilding confidence, and harmonizing with nature. With over 4 decades of changing lives, your self-discovery archaeologist, get ready to be the best of you with your host, Beverly Zeimet.
Hello everyone, and welcome to the Beverly Zeimet Show, where being the best you has just gotten easier. My guest today is Lindsey Wander, and she's wandering in from Chicago. Welcome to the show, Lindsey.
Hi, nice to see you.
So, you got snow out there? It snowed last night over here in Denver.
Oh man, there's a lot of snow. Do we not have snow is the question. Yeah, there's a lot of snow.
Well, yeah, it's been kind of crazy weather for the past week, kind of all over. Everyone's having extreme cold. They actually even had snow, I guess, in Vegas a few weeks ago, which is
That's crazy.
It is. You know, they get it every so often, but they had a lot this last time.
Yeah, I had a friend in San Diego that got hail. So yeah, it's wacky.
Yeah, it sure is. It sure is. So, Lindsey, what is it that you do out there in Chicagoland?
I mean, right now, in the middle of a pandemic, I hang out in my bunker, which used to call it my apartment, but now it's my bunker. But, you know, normally I am out there going around meeting students. I have a tutoring company that I started here in Chicago that works with students all over Illinois, and I actually expanded it to Texas as well. And I'm usually out there riding the L, going to students, coming home, checking out our delicious food. But, you know, loving Chicago life. I'm actually originally from California, so I soak in as much Chicago as I can.
Okay, yeah, that's quite an extreme difference.
Especially this time of year, yeah.
Yes, especially. I've spent my share in the Chicago arena as well. I actually grew up in Iowa, and I've got some really good friends out there in that area, so I get back and forth, and it's like, you know, I think I'll visit them in the summertime, right?
Yeah, that's what my problem was. I visited Chicago in the summer and got hooked, and then I came in the winter. I was like, hang on, what? So I usually travel in the winter, so that's kind of my low season for work and my excuse to go to some tropical island. And right now, travel is cut, so I'm here watching the snow globe out my window and, you know, hanging out in the bunker.
Yeah, you know, I think that's kind of what everyone's doing. It put my traveling plans on hold as well, because I'm pretty much a nomad, gypsy, whatever you want to call it, continuously on the move, you know?
Same.
And then all of a sudden it's like, and it's like, I haven't been in one space this long in years, a lot of years.
No, I can't even remember, honestly, where I've gone almost a full year without travel. It's rough.
Yeah.
Luckily, again, you know, I'm from California. So when I go home to visit, I get to go somewhere warm. So I did go home for the holidays, and I am going back next week just for mental wellness to see family and to be able to be outside. So it's not a tropical island, but at least it's somewhere outside of these four walls.
Yes, you know, you're not alone in that. There's so many people that are feeling that way. And again, when you look at the stats, they're not healthy stats, right?
Yeah.
You know, so it's getting resourceful and figuring out, you know, okay, in the guise of this, what is it that I can do? You know, how can I not survive but begin to thrive in this community, right? And what's happening in the world today. So share a little bit with the audience, you know, your tutoring business and what kind of tutoring you do, because there's lots of kinds of tutoring, you know, and how they could benefit from what you do, maybe, and help them through some of the struggles throughout this pandemic time.
You know, so my background is actually in science. I went to school originally for biomedical engineering, and so I've really noticed that that's played a part in how I teach and how I run my business. You know, I definitely think like a scientist and try to bring that to my students as well. So, you know, starting from a place of wonder and questioning and testing things out and evaluating how they work and trying again. These are things I really work on with our students, as well as, you know, the entrepreneurial mindset of dealing with the ups and downs, getting through those lows, learning skills and tools to help you the next time you face a low, because it's going to happen. Being an entrepreneur is a very bumpy road, and knowing not to take things personally or to tie it to your, you know, identity, and to just keep pushing through when it's something you really truly care about. And so I think that my experiences as a scientist and a business owner have definitely shaped the way that I teach. What we do as a tutoring company that I think is very different than other tutoring companies is we don't just focus on the content. You know, people come to us because they want higher grades and higher scores, and, you know, it's gonna happen. They're gonna get higher grades and higher scores. But what I really seek to do with my company is to work on the skills that aren't directly being taught, but are so important for success, whether you are a scientist or an entrepreneur or whatever you go into. And so the way that I do that is I break it into 3 categories. One of them is metacognition, which is a big foo-foo word that just says basically thinking about how you think. And that's a really valuable skill if you are going to push forward with anything. It's, you know, looking around at what's around you and saying, how can I solve this problem? You know, once you get through a challenge, what worked, what didn't work. There's also executive functions, which I got trained in a decade ago, but now people are really knowing this word, and I'm so happy for it. It's the get stuff done part of the brain.
Right.
The planning, prioritizing, task management, task initiation. And then there's also the interpersonal skills, which is something that's taught more heavily, you know, the social emotional intelligence in elementary school. And then we just kind of stop. And we're not really talking to kids about advocacy and leadership and active listening and conflict resolution and innovation and critical thinking and all these skills that are really valuable when you become an adult. And, you know, those grades and scores got you to a position where now you're looking around and you're a leader of some sort, and you need these skills to really affect change. And so what I've done is found ways to intertwine lessons on those skills into our lessons for ACT prep or calculus or coding, whatever it is that we're helping our students with. It's a really unique opportunity as tutors, when we're so close to students, to also work on these other valuable skills with them. And a lot of educators just don't touch this stuff because it gets emotional, it gets deep, and sometimes it's uncomfortable, and you have to be kind of vulnerable yourself. And I really come at it head on, and so do my tutors. We really embrace our position as educators and use our opportunity to work at a deeper level with our kids.
Oh, that is so beautiful, because you're right. You know, we don't teach our children, you know, how to interact, say, in the world, right? And those skills are key elements that used to be a part of, you know, teaching and just a part of life, you know, as you move through life and growing up. Not so much over, I would say, probably the last 30 decades at least. Things have been kind of shifting the other way. You know, the time element, you had a lot of single parents, you know, then you had kids taking care of kids and latchkey kids, you know, all of these different arenas that were happening. And those skill sets kind of disappeared. And especially when the technology world came into play, you know, it just kind of took over, right? And now all of a sudden we're coming into an area where it's like, wow, what is this skill force? You know, information and knowledge is great, but if you don't have the capacity or the know-how to incorporate it and to put it out there, you know, in a manner to create results and even greater results, it's basically worthless, right?
Absolutely.
So what you're doing there is very intriguing and very well needed throughout, you know, the world today. And especially with this pandemic, we have so much time where we're spent in quiet space, in captured space, you know? And, you know, so here we are living in 4 walls, and we're also on a Zoom, which is 4 corners, right? So it triggers a lot of stress. And I don't know if you're familiar with the virtual reality world. Mm-hmm. Yeah. And that's where I like to go. And it's interesting why it has become a multi-billion-dollar industry, because it's a way to escape the so-called reality world, right? But at the same time, it can be beneficial, just like what you're doing, with your tutoring. And so my partner and I, we started a business a year ago, actually, in February, working in the virtual reality world, where we took the game out and put education back in, we put entertainment back in, we put business back into it. So there's that connection and that bonding, that interaction, and learning how to be able to be a part of a community. Little did we know that community was going to be like uprooted, so crazily. So working in that virtual reality aspect for business and stuff has really taken people out of these little corners, these 4 squares, and put them in an environment where they can interact face to face again. It's COVID free, right? Yeah. There's no social distancing in there, and our avatars, we teach you how to, how to dress and how to walk and the talk and stuff like that, right? So they're not a cartoon character, and we see a lot of cartoon characters, coming into the world, and all the experts are saying, 2021 is the year of the avatar. So when you look at that word, it's becoming a household word, right? Did you get your avatar on Facebook? Well, know your avatar. If you're you're in business. Where does your avatar live? What does your avatar do? Right? So that word is there. So why not take it into that level to where you can bring community back together, interact globally, and really have a community of connectedness. Again, people need people. You know the science behind it. I work with the science behind it. The brain, and a lot of people say, I need to see people face to face. Well, your brain doesn't say that. Your brain says, there's a person here. It's kind of like Clubhouse. Are you familiar with Clubhouse?
I just got introduced to Clubhouse yesterday.
Oh, did you? Well, what a coincidence. Yeah, I got introduced a few weeks ago, and it's all about the audio. So it's like going back into radio, again, and it's that audio. So it's a level playing field, so to speak. Mm-hmm. And you have to listen to the tone, you listen to everything that's going on, and your other senses are being used. The same thing kind of happens when you're in virtual reality, because the playing field is level. Yes, you see a character, so to speak, but that character is the personality of the one who is speaking. But it gives you that concept. The brain says, wow, there is actually somebody right here. Same thing when you're in audio. And that's why podcasting was so strong, right? Because people are listening to the voice of. And when they're driving, you're listening to the radio, or you're listening to podcast radios. So you're getting that information, but you have to pay attention to the sound. So it's going back in. So again, we go back into that science and how we learn. And we learn through avatars, which has been what? Decades, centuries, civilizations, learning in fables, right? And story time. The trees talk, the dogs talk, the buildings talk. And that's kind of how we learn. And so when you're in a virtual reality environment, whether it's a game, whether it's a movie, whether it's a TV show, that's the virtual reality of it. And it's an escape, but at the same time, it can be something more than an escape. It can be actually a reality that's going to get you back into some normalcy and really connect again. Connect to that soul spirit of that person, right? Yeah. So, go ahead.
I definitely foresee VR becoming a big part of education, especially in terms, like you keep saying, leveling the playing field, making education more equitable. Right. One of the side effects of moving online that I've seen, even just within my business, is that we're not limited by geography and zip code anymore. I can take a tutor in Texas that I know would be a perfect fit for one of my students in Illinois and put them together, and I'm not limited by who could commute to that student's home in Illinois, and I'm able to better match. And what I foresee happening in education, and it's already started, where college professors are giving their lectures online and people can tune into them from anywhere in the world.
Right.
I foresee VR coming into this where kids from all different locations can tap into lectures from an expert at a different location and get a high quality of education that they normally wouldn't get because they were limited by geography. And a way to make that feel more realistic and approachable is VR, because our kids are brought up in this world. That's something they're very comfortable with. Yes, you do lose some of the things like body language in a way, kind of, sorta, or facial expressions, but you do gain in having to pay more attention to vocal inflections and to focus more on the words that are being spoken by cutting out the distractions that are around.
Right.
And I've seen that really be true with Zoom even. I mean, we've been using Zoom for a long time, and I've had parents who have said, I don't think my kid can learn online. And I've had some parents that have given it a try, and it surprisingly has worked really well with some of our kids who have ADD or ADHD, because it is everything is right here in those four walls,
Right.
And so it cuts out on the distractions for them. They can focus really in on what's right in front of them. So I just like the idea of variety, because not everyone learns the same way. And some, their dominant style is more visual, some are dominantly more auditory, and some are more kinesthetic. Some, it really varies. And I like the idea that there's different ways to approach learning than the traditional sitting in a classroom, being taught by the same teacher every single day, that's there at your school, that we have options and you can find what works for you. And I do foresee VR becoming a big part of that. And I think it's really cool. I kind of wish I had more of a tech background. Years back, I started thinking, this is going to be something. And I had some of my engineering clients who, are parents who are like, Lindsey, get on this. This is going to happen. And I'm like, I am not the one. But I love the idea of it, of, again, creating more equitable education and making it more accessible for everyone. I do hope that there are people out there that do make it affordable. I think, with new administration and with what's going on with the pandemic, education's definitely being spotlighted and making things equitable. So I'm hoping that it's not something that only the people who can afford it can access, that it really is equitable and accessible, because it could be really cool what it does for our nation in terms of elevating us as a society.
Oh, very well spoken. Very well spoken. And are you sure you're not in VR?
But my background is STEM, and so I'm a big supporter of it, and it's happening. I mean, people are fighting it. They're fighting it, and sorry, this is our world. It's happening. We're living the technology. This is how we prepare our kids for the workforce. We got to embrace it.
They live in that world, and if we're not going to lose them, we're going to have to start moving into that world as well. Mm-hmm. And again, like you said, you learn on all these different levels, and VR is actually very affordable. And the platform that we use, you can use, it's PC compatible right now, and it's a free platform, okay? And how we set it up, depends on what it is that you have going on, because we do like needs assessments, and we have rooms and things available that can be utilized by, entrepreneurs or teachers or speakers or whatever the case may be, right? Business owners, the whole enchilada. And so it is very affordable. You don't need those Oculus glasses. So you can be directly on the platform, just on your PC, and have that interaction. So it has come down in price. It used to be, kind of way up there, right? The things have shifted. I know last year we talked with quite a few different educational facilities, and a lot of red tape. And they were kind of in this rush thing, hurry up, and the first thing available, zoom, and all of a sudden they're realizing that these kids are saying, are you kidding me? I have to sit there for how many hours looking at this? There's no interaction, there's no movement. They want that activity, right? And teachers didn't know whether these kids were there or not. And the majority of them, I'm listening to my grandkids talk, and I'm listening to nieces and nephews talk, and you know what they do? They shut off their mic, they shut off their picture, and then what do? They get on this thing, and they reach out to their friends, and they're playing games.
Yeah.
Right? You know, that's what happens. And in the virtual reality world, they are now interacting with their friends. They're not sitting here staring at a screen. They're actually in a room with their friends where they can look and they can talk to them. And this is, like I said, they do live in that world. And so they have that interaction. You can take them to recess. You can take them on field trips. You can interact with them because they're talking right there. You have interaction that you don't have in a Zoom because you're trying to figure out who's talking. The teacher can be up there on in front of the class. You can have a class on the beach. Like you said, there's no geography anymore, which is really awesome. And to be able to connect and relate to the person that is speaking your language, so to speak, you know, to actually capture how you learn. Mm-hmm. And learning, I mean, the school system has been kind of outdated for a lot of years, let's put it that way, right? Mm-hmm. I mean, when I went to school back in the 50s, okay, now I'm dating myself, it is still the same school system that's being taught today. Mm-hmm. It didn't work back then. Well, it's still not working, right? And that's why the tutoring like yourself, and it's such a blessing to hear how you say what you're doing and how you're incorporating these personal skills for business, for life, to be able to move into a society, be functionable, right?
You know, I mean, to speak to a few things you said, when you are working with kids, rule number one is you meet the kids where they are.
Yes.
And learning should be fun. The learning is fun for them. If we just let them learn, I mean, I, as an adult, have to try to harness their sense of wonder and joy sometimes because it's fun for them to question and look around at the world around them. So, you know, kids are already, when they turn off Zoom and they play games, the games are technology. So it's not that they're saying no to technology. They want it to be fun and engaging and interactive. We really missed an opportunity here, I think. I feel like spring was crisis mode. What's the quickest way to get on? Okay, you have an excuse there. Right. So you had all summer to really work on how to make this better. Mm-hmm. And then here comes fall. And we're like, we're opening school doors. Come on. And then we shut back down and now we're in a frantic frazzle to go back on Zoom. Come on. Like there's so much technology out there that has gamified learning.
Right.
And we all know this. We have children and grandchildren that sit on these apps that make us feel less guilty because they're learning, but they're playing games while they're learning. There's nothing wrong with that. They're still learning. I mean, really in a classroom, that's what it's about. It's making things fun and engaging, and it's kind of gamifying learning there too. I mean, you earn grades on things, you earn scores on things. We're doing that anyway. And then, you know, your idea about it, the school system being antiquated, I completely agree. You know, schools were developed during the Industrial Revolution where it was all about pumping out workers that do the same task over and over again.
Exactly.
It wasn't about innovation and critical thinking and creativity. Society is different, and we are falling behind as a nation because we're not teaching these skills anymore. We're trying to teach problem solving by learning math equations, memorizing math equations. That's not the only way to teach problem solving. And it's not really preparing them for the real world where there's not one way to come at something. There's many different ways to go from A to B, and we want them to create the different ways to get there. And unfortunately, sometimes we're just limited by tangible things. So why not use technology to help us with that? People are really stuck, I think, and I've been very impressed with humanity's way to innovate during this. There's been a lot of things that have happened where I'm like, go, you humans, you know, we're really coming up with some good things. But I do think when it comes to education, we missed the mark. We had a really big opportunity there, and we didn't take it. And I'm hoping 2021 is different because people are fed up. They're like, I've been doing this for a year. It's not working. And
Exactly.
I hope that people are more willing to embrace technology, because I'll be honest, it's really the parents that have been hesitant, or the adults, I'll say. What? Technology? The kids don't learn this way. And I think now people are hopefully more open to embracing it. I mean, even us with Zoom, 2 years ago, nobody would do Zoom. I'd get 5% of our clients. Now, 50% are on Zoom and happy to do it. So I think the experience that adults are having with technology and seeing how it's working, and finding that you can't really measure efficiency of work by your hours of the day. It's really about how efficient are you at work?
Right.
Novel idea, right? I think that we're starting to look at how can we change education as a result, and I'm happy for it. It's about dang time.
Yeah, it is. I agree 100% with that. And even with business owners and stuff, I mean, the work from home, that was something that has been spoken about for years, right? Mm-hmm. Years. And then all of a sudden, it's like, oh, we got to work from home or we're going to be out of business, right? And all of a sudden, it became the thing. With the virtual reality and how the platforms are laid out, there's pros and cons with everything. And when you're at home, now how does a fellow employee or the boss connect with you? They either get you on phone, or they send you emails, or they send text messages, like that. But they're not always received at the moment you need it. And so basically moving into the virtual reality world, and everyone now on that same platform, everyone is in an office setting. So you're not trying to, you can't stay on Zoom 24/7 in the business world. It's just not relevant, right? And so when you have the platform open in the virtual reality, it's always there. And the nice thing about it is everyone is on it. You can go about your day doing whatever it is. However, when a fellow employee or the boss needs something, they can say, "Hey, Lindsay," and you can say, "Yes, what do you need?" And because you're right there. And it's like, "I'm looking for this file, and I don't know where it's at. Do you have any idea?" And you say, "You know what? Let me check." And then you da-da-da-da. "I found it. Is this the one you're looking for? It contains da-da-da." And they're like, "That's the one I need." "Okay, I'll stick it in an email and ship it over to you," right? So it happens on the spot. Where when you're outside of it and you're working from home, you have to try to get them on the phone, try to text them, or get it in an email that might be seen 15 minutes later, an hour later, the next day, because things get lost in those types of, connections, right? And when you're on the platform, it's instantaneous, so it's more productive, it's highly focused, everyone is accessible, but you don't have to sit there like this and just stare at the screen. Is somebody going to talk to me? And the same thing with kids when they're in that environment, and how we presented it to educationers, right? They liked the idea, they liked the concept, but the big excuse, are you ready for this? Well, we don't know how it's going to be received, and we have to go through all this red tape, and then there's the money and all this stuff, and it's like, wait a minute. They are buying equipment to give to kids to get on Zoom. What's the difference if you buy equipment to get in virtual reality? This didn't make sense to me, right?
Welcome to the education. Hence why I'm no longer a classroom teacher. It's very frustrating. The red tape of like, what? How is that red tape? Like, it just doesn't make sense.
Right. Yeah. And then it's this curriculum thing. Well, if you don't meet these standards, we can't say that they graduated. We can't say they got an education. It's like, what? Right? The school of hard knocks, so to speak, is street smart is something that's valuable. And when you can incorporate that street smartness, which is what it appears that you're doing here, with the knowledge, and then saying, here's how you put it into action, now you have a system that's going to continue to work. Because we all know, if you follow a system, it works. People don't. Systems do, right?
Mm-hmm. And then I think the idea of making it, coming back to the person, making things personalized.
Right.
One, there's not one fit for all. You really have to, and that works. And people are kind of like, well, kids should be able to adapt to situations, and I get that, but like, as business owners, as employees. I mean, it's all about that interaction. And again, meeting them where they're at.
Right.
That's how things are successful. You can't treat people as transactions. You have to treat them as people. And school has become very transactional. You know, the business of K through 12 is to get those kids to graduate. If the kids don't graduate, then they are not a successful business. So they push these kids through and meet these markers, and it's not about the person anymore. In talking to students and also adults, the things that they miss most about in person is the interaction, is that
Right.
human quality. You know, in the office, it's those water cooler talks, you know, sitting and, you know, passing each other in the hallway. In schools, my students have told me their favorite part of the day now that they've gone back is the parking lots, is hanging out in the parking lot. They hate being in the classroom because they're in one room all day long,
Right.
with desks spaced apart. They said even going to the restroom is a big hassle because, you know, they're not allowed to leave. We're not going to go back to what we think is normal for a long time. Again, my background is in biochem. This virus,
it's never
this is
going to go
be a
back.
problem for a while, and it's
Yeah.
not our last time dealing with a virus like this. This will happen again in our lifetime, and so we have to come up with a longer term solution for this and find a way to tap into the person, and give them those moments of interaction that we're so much craving, that we're just not getting because we're trying to stay safe. And really, health is number one, and I get it. But like, we still have that mental health component too that we need to meet, because we've been in this a year and people are really feeling it. You know,
Right.
I call it my bunker jokingly, but like, you know, I'm feeling it, and hence why I'm flying to California next week. I just need people around me, you know, but like, if we can harness that a different way that would still be safer, then why wouldn't we explore that opportunity?
Right. And it makes perfectly good sense, but sometimes when you're in different industries, sense doesn't come into it, right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
But I feel like education should be the place that
Yes.
we should be innovative and making sense. I mean, what else do we want for our kids? You know, we demonstrate that, but yeah, we're very locked into the old ways. It's an old, antiquated business, really.
It's very antiquated, and they've taken a lot of the creativity, you know, out of the schools. You know, they take music out, they're taking art out, you know, and this is where the kids live. This is where we all live, is in that creativity, and that's why they are so drawn into that world of technology, whether it's gaming or what, you know, whatever the case may be. Right, is because they want that movement. It's their drug of choice, that action, you know.
And it's awesome. That's a great drug, the creativity and innovation. Let's feed into that, you know.
Exactly.
Like, why would we want to stop that? Yeah, that's why I left the teaching profession. The school I was at in California, they let me be creative in my teaching. I taught biology and math, which aren't creative subjects, but we were creative in that room. We innovated, we built, we synthesized. Then I went to a school here in Chicago that made me do test questions all day long to teach biology. Like, I just didn't understand it, you know, like
Right.
there's so many other ways to teach something besides a piece of paper and a pencil. And why am I being limited? I have a storage unit full of stuff that you don't even need to buy. I have it. I've paid for it. I've gotten grants for it. But it is, again, about those test scores and about the way things look on the outside. And you know, there's big changes that need to be happen. And I'm kind of glad for the pandemic, because some things have already started rolling into effect.
Right.
There's definitely been less of an emphasis on grades and scores, which I'm happy for. And that's come from the colleges down, and that's where it needed to kind of come from. The jobs, I think, have already started kind of adjusting. It's not so much about your GPA and your grades. It's about your experiences and kind of what you've done. And so colleges have started adjusting, and it's going to trickle down to the high schools and hopefully work its way down. But I'm disappointed that it hasn't happened quicker.
Yeah. I am so right beside you on that. So right beside you. What is one more thing that you could share with this audience? You have given so much insight and so much information on what you do. You know, so what would be one key element that you could leave the audience with? And tell us how they can get a hold of you in what you're doing with tutoring, because there's a lot of parents that are out here listening to this, and what could they do to help their children get on that tutoring, get out there where this point system, this grade system is like, I can remember when I hated school. Oh my gosh, I hated school so much, and I never could understand how does it matter who discovered the Mississippi River?
Yeah.
You know.
If you can Google it, my rule is if you can Google it, you don't need to memorize it.
Exactly. And I've been out of school for a long time, and I have never once used that diploma.
Maybe in a trivia game. And what is that? What do you get? Free drinks? Yeah, it's not. Yeah, I agree. The advice I would give, and mine's probably more child-centered, because I think a lot of people listening maybe have kids at home and are like, okay, great. So how do I tap into their innovation and their creativity? Like, how can I do that? A lot of what I advise parents and educators to do is to give children a chance to explore. And sometimes you need to jumpstart it for them. You need to kind of give them a place to begin or an example, but then they will go for it. So one really easy example, there's like a paperclip experiment where you just ask kids, what are the different ways you can use a paperclip? And they'll kind of be like, to clip papers together. And you're like, come on, well, I could use it to poke the cheese I want to eat, or I can use it to draw my eyeliner, and give them a few examples and they can go for it. I would try to implement that throughout your daily life. What are other ways that we could do this? Maybe we could do it this way. Give them one example and they will roll with it and come up with other ways. Just getting them to look at the world differently and not always think of the obvious,
right.
Thinking of other ways to do things at home. And if you can, even implementing some of them shows them that they have a voice that's being heard and helps with their advocacy. But, just getting them as often as you can to look at things a little differently and pushing them. I bet you could think of another way to build this bridge out of Legos. Can you make it wider? Can you do it taller? Trying to kind of challenge them, gamify it in a way.
Right.
That doesn't necessarily, if for parents especially who want to take things off the screen for a little while and make it more of an interaction with them and their child, those are really great ways to get them to start looking at things differently. And so I would just challenge any adults listening to try to implement that, even once a week, and kind of see how that really empowers your children, helps them become more confident, helps them become more independent, because they're going to better problem solve other things and think outside the box later. And that's a really valuable skill that we should have our children learning, that they just don't always learn in the classroom, unfortunately. And then in terms of finding me, so I have my two companies. I have WorldWise Tutoring, which you can find us online, worldwisetutoring.com. We work with students of all ages. Literally, I have a student who's 2 and a student who's 60 right now. So we are all ages, all subjects, all abilities. We do a lot of the coding and the tech stuff as well. I have a pretty STEM-heavy staff. And you can find WorldWise Tutoring also on social media. So any of the social media accounts. I also have a nonprofit called Educate, Radiate, Elevate, which is educateradiateelevate.org, or if that's annoying, you could do eretutoring.org, which is also on social media, and that's for K through 12 low-income students of color. And both of them are really about teaching those underlying skills that are essential for success that just aren't always being taught, and sharing how parents can do this at home, or how educators can implement it into their classrooms. Without really any cost or effort. Very simple to do. Just kind of, again, meeting the kids where they're at.
Wow. Thank you so much for that information, and thank you for being here. It's a special treat for the audience. We haven't had someone in this arena in a while, and so it's beautiful to get that, from not only the perspective of education, but the perspective of science and how those two actually work together, and what you're doing to trigger the brain to start thinking outside of the box, so to speak, and like you said, meeting them where they are. And I think every one of us, regardless of race, color, creed, age, any of that, things that we segregate with, right, as to meet that person where they are, and then you can move forward in what you do, right? So.
And that's, I think, the big takeaway with kids, with work, with everyone.
Yeah, and it makes it fun, too.
It does, yeah.
Yeah. Well, thank you so much, Lindsey, for being here. And now it's time to say, go out there, be that best you that you can be. Because Lindsey over here is teaching everyone how to do that. So Her and I are going to be the best we that we could be today, and we want to thank you all for being on the show and listening today. Make sure you comment, reach out to her, and let's make it a better place to be. Thank you all for listening.
Thank you.